Okay, hello everybody. Thank you very much for holding on while I figure out like perennial Discord issues. I don't know what the hell is wrong with me, but it's fixed. Anyway, for people who don't know me, my name is Cameron. I work here at Letta, and my job is to tell you guys that that bug that you requested be fixed is coming soon, trademark. That's my job here. So I apologize for the slowness on some of these things. There's been a lot of like stuff that we've been working through on core, which we can talk about a little bit today. So let me make little notes for myself here. Can you give us an update on that bug? You're going to have to be so much more specific, Mike. There are a lot of those. So, yeah. I know you're just messing with me. If that was a real thing, I would be like, I'm going to fall apart right now. I also hate that bug. I hate that bug so much, Sam. So let me get started here. I'll give you like the overview. I'll give you like just some general updates and just kind of some stuff that we're working through. So you kind of know what's going on in Letta world. And if you have questions, I'll try and answer those throughout so that you can just kind of type stuff in and I'll jump in when it seems kind of reasonable. Let's see here. Hold on, let me silence my phone if I have not. Okay, it is silenced. Okay. Man, a lot of people hate that bug. We should probably fix that. I'll make Karen do that. Okay, so one of the big things that we're working on is the Letta V1 SDK. So currently we haven't like fixed like a version 1 release of the SDK. And we've been changing the SDK like a lot, more or less continuously, because it's kind of in development. We figured out more or less all of the abstractions that we want to have in place for the Letta SDK. And so for the past like maybe month or month and a half, we've been trying to get all of these changes into the SDK so that we'll do just like one big breaking change. So when you go from 0.06 or whatever it is right now to version 1, you will get enough changes that you will have to modify your code. A lot of the changes are not small. For example, modify, agents.modify is being changed to agents.update. Everything is now snake case. So like agent underscore ID rather than agent capital ID as it is in the TypeScript SDK. So everything will be completely unified in terms of using snake case. So this should resolve a bunch of problems where like language models have like a bunch of trouble like writing the TypeScript code. There is a comprehensive migration guide. Let me see where that went. The migration guide is still being written. You can look at a demo version, possible migration guide. Let me briefly share my screen so people can like take a look at what that looks like. But there's going to be like kind of a lot of changes, and we want to make it super easy for you to update your code because this will be the new pattern for pretty much everything, and we're doing a huge overhaul of all of the endpoints and everything so that we can just like get all of these things that we hate about the SDK all in place all at once. You will get a lot of like deprecation warnings and stuff like that, and you may have already started noticing things be like soft deprecated inside of the API reference. Some of those things are erroneous, and I'm trying to like get some things unflagged as deprecated, like compiling the context window as an endpoint seems to be deprecated for no reason. So we're using snake case as the big one. There is now a simplified client constructor, which I can show you an example of. We're renaming some of the methods. We're like kind of reorganizing how things are, like how you do imports so that they're path-based and a little easier to navigate. Enums are now just like string literals because like enums are like kind of stupid. when you can just use string literals. Tool calls, single object to an array structure, which should be a lot easier. I believe the reason for this is to support parallel tool calling. So Anthropic models should be can support parallel tool calling, where they give you a list of tools they want to execute, and then you can execute them server-side all at once. So that's been an ongoing process. I believe that's partially supported on like the ADE and stuff. And then everything now has pages. So like tools, for example, were not paginated. So you couldn't like list all tools, and so we had to like cap tools at like 300 or something like that. So there's just like a ton of crap now. So you get like, you can do pages, and it works for pretty much every list endpoint here, I believe. We're like changing like client.agents.modify to client.agents.update. Like summarize is now much like a simpler endpoint. There's stuff for like canceling runs that's easier. Like export agent serialized is nonsense. It's just changing to export and import. That's much simpler. Folders.agents.list is much simpler. Like, so the SDK endpoints should just be like much more coherent than what we've been doing previously. There's going to be a bunch of stuff here that is like kind of just being renamed or deprecated, which you can go take a look at. And this isn't comprehensive yet. We're still working on this guide. This is just like a quick preview. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so you don't have to do this anymore. Letta.stopReason type.end turn, because that's stupid. You just say like stop reason equals turn, right? Super easy. Tool call structure. Yeah, so you're now going to get a list of tool calls rather than a single one, because previously you would get a tool call message. And that doesn't make sense for parallel tool calling, so you're going to get a list. This one may be slightly breaking for people, so make sure that when you're getting tool calls, you like either, you know, for single serial tool calling agents, you just get the first tool in the list. Dates are going to change. Oh, I didn't know that, actually. Interesting. They're probably going to be strings, I imagine. Archive management. Oh, yeah. Archives are going to be changing quite a bit. So archives now are a distinct object inside of Letta that are not directly attached to agents. Like, you know, previously if you deleted an agent, you would delete all of its archival memories. That's not going to be the case anymore. Archival memories can be shared. So like here, you can take an archive and you can attach it to an agent using an archive ID. And what that means is multiple agents can share the same archive. They can all contribute memories to it if they want. Any of them can search. This allows you to do shared archives between sleep-time agents for sleep-time and primary agent. So like, for example, your sleep-time agent can store archival memories while your primary agent can search them. I'm also interested in seeing how this goes with like very large scale multi-agent systems, because you could potentially have like hundreds or thousands of agents that are just like processing many streams of information and dumping a bunch of archival memories in, so that you know your primary agent has a lot of information to work with. Identity and block management, that shouldn't be too much different. Oh, yeah. Blocks are now something that you can attach to identities. Previously, identity scoping blocks was a huge pain in the ass. Like, you had to store it inside of like basically a metadata field inside of identities. Now it's just going to be like, you take a block, you attach it to an identity, and now that block is identity scoped. You can fix blocks to particular identities, you know, users or projects or whatever. Or not projects, but like whatever you would use identities for. Which is often just used for users on your like application. Let's see. Oh, there's also going to be this. Instead of having to do this messages list here where you do like role user content hello, you can just do input hello, because we can just like pretend that it's user scoped. You can do both, but this is very simple, like syntactic sugar. Blah 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 blah. Query parameters, tags. Don't mind. Oh, project ID. Now you can put in the client. That's big. It will work now. So you can go get your project ID and then project scope your entire client so that the client only works within the project. This is part of a general trend that we're doing where we're just going to project scope everything so that you don't have to have like a bunch of like, you don't have to like try and like search by projects because projects were like previously being inside of like the headers for like specific endpoints. Like the project scoping was really dumb. So we're going to start project scoping everything, including tools, so that you don't have to have like, you can have like different tools per project, which may, you know, that like share the same name or whatever. So that should be useful. Basically just make projects much more useful. And then there's like some other stuff in here that's like for migrating. There'll be some troubleshooting in here as well. So let's see here. Okay, so that's just some overview here. Let me take a look here. Let's see here. I wish I could use my voice agent with Letta. Yeah, there's the voice agent thing. I think you can actually do. People have tried it. Some people have reported that they were able to get VAPI to work with the new completions endpoint. This is in response to Starlet's question, or Starlet said, I wish I could use my voice agent with Letta. I also merged a PR to LiveKit, so LiveKit may work with Letta now, but people need to try it. Let me check if the docs have updated voice agents using LiveKit. Yeah, people try out the LiveKit integration here with voice. Some people have told me they don't like LiveKit because it like locks you into their like whole weird ecosystem, but whatever, it's fine. Is the response structure also changing? I'm not sure what Torian asks, is the response structure? I'm not sure what you mean by response structure, like the list of messages that you get. That should be the same, but like there will be some differences in which message types are available. So for example, you know, there's like a bunch of messages in there that should be separate types. For example, like summarization messages. I believe those are now being treated as separate message types, so you can filter them out very easily. You will also be able to like, you know, instead of a tool call message, you'll get a list of tool calls. And then, but I think everything else should like more or less be the same. Like there's only a few minor differences, and making it easier just to remove crap that you don't actually want. Can we share an ETA for availability? We've been planning to release the V1 SDK every week for the past month and a half. But there's so much stuff that we need to get in, so it's been taking a while. I think the general pressure that we have at the company right now is like within a week, because it needs to get out. You can already use the SDK alphas. So if you go to like, if you go to like the Python, like pip, like PyPy, you can use the alpha release. You can see that in the tags if you click into it, like PyPy, Letta client, release history. Yeah, so for example, if you use the Python client, you can use the preview version there. Same thing with if you use the TypeScript client. They're all available currently, but they're not like general release. Like we haven't fixed it, so everything in there should be be functional if you want to try out the early versions of this. Share archive. Yes, Torian says the swap is from project name to client project ID. Yes, that is correct. Project name was like kind of dumb. You want to have the IDs now. I had a lot of questions. Hyoka says a lot of questions about the ambiguity of project IDs and slugs. Absolutely. It was extremely stupid. Like you, like you'd have the project slug in the client, but only the specific endpoints would accept the project ID, which is like nonsensical. So we're trying to consolidate all of that stuff so it's like less dumb. Let's see. My voice agent is fully local. You should be able to do that with VAPI, maybe, or live. I don't know. Yeah, voice agents, I still don't understand. I never want to hear my robot talk to me. I never want that. I only want to talk to my robot. And so like I'm still baffled, but I understand speech to text. I do not understand text to speech. Eric says, Letta rocks. I have a production agent running for a business in Discord with solid memory blocks and project task management for 50 different channels. Hell yeah. I love to hear it, Eric. Thank you for sharing. Are there any ways to connect to a custom voice backend instead of those predefined ones? Yes, Starlet. You can just use anything that supports the chat completions endpoint should work. Let's see here. I think is this the one? Yeah, you can just use the chat completions endpoint. For that, you just send the chat completions, and inside of the model field that you would normally do inside of the OpenAI client, you can just set the agent ID. And so that should kind of address everything. I would try going to try experimenting with that and let me know how it goes, because the completions endpoint is like pretty new and I don't think it's been battle tested properly. Yuka says, when should I start migrating to the alpha release for the research project? I think most of the work is done now. Like, most of the endpoints in there should be pretty solid. There's like some bugs and like things that we're still tidying up and like adding a few like more arguments and things. If you want to start migrating to the V1 SDK, like you could probably start now if you wanted to. Like we have it running on Letta code. So Letta code is powered by the V1 SDK alpha. Let's see, probably good for accessibility. Mike is asking for built-in orchestration, so router, critic, planner, shared memory spaces, and guarantees for turn-taking or deadlock prevention. Built-in orchestration, we would call these groups. Groups have been delayed and so like groups, we haven't seen the same kind of thing, and we've had like the V1 SDK and stuff like that. So group is intended to be like handle some orchestration, but for the most part, you should be able to handle that pretty simply inside of the client side. Like I would recommend almost all orchestration happen on the client side for now. It's pretty easy to do. And as far as like the SDK is concerned, like the SDK is designed to be extremely composable. So like orchestrating, router, critic, planner, those are like pretty specific. And I don't know how much we want to have those. Like those are specific agent designs, not necessarily like a standard orchestration procedure. So I don't know, like critic, for example, I don't think would ever end up built in. Planner, also probably not going to be built in. Router, maybe. So yeah, like the group stuff for right now, I don't really have a timeline on it. Yes, I agree that speech-to-speech is great for accessibility. But it's not our bread and butter currently. Like, so I'll tell people like how you should be doing voice if you want to use Letta. Either try using that, like the completions endpoint, which should get you almost all of the way. If you really want ultra low latency, you should not go through Letta for right now. Because voice is not we can't focus on ultra low latency voice, because that's like, there are huge companies that spend a ton of energy building low latency voice platforms. What you should do, if you want statefulness with a voice agent, is you have a multi-agent system. You have one agent that is only a voice agent. All it does is accept some text prompt, which would contain the memory blocks of a Letta agent, and then whatever the voice is that comes in from the user. At the end of a turn, you take the transcripts that you generated and pass them to the Letta agent. The Letta agent will passively update the memory. At the beginning of the next turn, you just go download the memory blocks for the Letta agent and inject them into the prompt for the voice agent. This allows you to use Letta's statefulness and kind of like passive memory updating inside of the voice agent while also using the voice agent's like specialization. So anybody who really wants like low latency voice should focus on that kind of like that structure. If you're a person who really, really, really wants to do low latency voice, I recommend a simpler version of the Letta client, which is the AI Memory SDK. Oh yeah, I didn't read it as a request. By the way, I have a lot of struggle. I have a lot of difficulty modulating my tone, and so if I sound frustrated, it is because I can't I can't do pitch very well, and so I sometimes sound angry. My partners often do not like when we're talking because I sound mad because I don't have the sing-song quality. All right, Bar Starlet. Let's see. Yeah, so actually, because I posted the AI Memory SDK, which allows you to like sidecart a little bit, I'll show you what that looks like. So let me go share my screen. So we have we have people who request, why are you yelling at me? Yes, I've heard that many times. It's just passion. So we have a lot of requests from people who are like, I really like Mem0. And we're like, why? And the reason that they cite is that Mem0 is extremely easy to integrate. Mem0 has a really beautifully simple SDK. Their interface is extremely clean. As a memory platform, it's worse. It is not like Mem0 is our I won't speak for the company. My experience of Mem0 is that it is a toy, and it's a layer. It is not built in. Letta agents are intended to have memory as a built-in component. It is not like some drop-in component. That said, you can actually convert Letta agents to be a memory layer, right? Like this architecture I just described in kind of the voice setup, that's actually a drop-in layer to create like stateful agents with like this kind of like shim. So we have one approach to doing this, which is called the AI Memory SDK, and we just like massively overhauled the API. So previously it was built for anybody who has used the AI Memory SDK. Let me see here. Yes. Okay, so the very early version of the Memory SDK looked like this. You would create a memory, and this is just a super lightweight wrapper around a particular Letta agent. Then you would say get user memory, and if it doesn't exist, you create the block. Underneath the hood, this is just creating a Letta agent and giving it a block that's called user, and then you can go and get that block. Then you you format this memory block as basically an XML block. So you go download the block and you get like a piece of text that you can use to inject in any prompt. Then you create a system prompt that you would normally send to any agent. And in this case, we're going to append the user memory block to the system prompt. And then you'd create this messages thing. If you've ever used like the OpenAI SDK, this is very familiar to you. And then you just send it to OpenAI. Here we're not going through Letta or anything. We're just like using Letta as the memory management layer. Then you get the response that we got from OpenAI, and then you can just add those messages to the memory. And what this does is it passes a bunch of stuff to the Letta agent that manages that memory block and says, please passively update what's inside of those memory blocks. So the next time you call this, it'll use whatever the state is inside of the Letta agent. So you're basically treating the Letta agent as the sleep time companion, or the sleep time agent. We're not allowed to say sleep time companion anymore because we don't want to like sell waifu pillows. So we say companion sleep time. Which is not that much better. So this is the original version of the AI SDK, or the AI Memory SDK. Very, very simple. Only meant for these user blocks. I did a huge overhaul that completely generalizes it. So this is now uses initialize memory, arbitrary blocks. You give it a description and a value, you can add messages, get memory, blah, blah, blah. And this will basically allow you to create agents with multiple memory blocks, with an arbitrary memory architecture in a very simple way. You can also subject scope them. So for example, this will create a subject called Project Alpha. Project Alpha is essentially just an agent. You're going to create like a memory block called spec with a value v1 and the subject ID project alpha. This will attach that block to that subject project alpha, and then you can add messages to that subject. You can also instance scope it. Instance scope it by constructing the memory with the subject ID. That just says like user Sarah. This is an agent that tracks everything about Sarah. You can attach an arbitrary number of memory blocks using initialize memory, and when you add past messages, this agent will just update all of those blocks. So this allows you to build like essentially an arbitrarily complicated memory architecture without actually going through like Letta as your inference provider, or even an inference provider at all. You can literally just dump content in here to like have it update and store memory as it goes along. So if you haven't used the AI Memory SDK, it's worth a shot. We upgraded to 0.2 is the stuff that includes all this new interface, so it should be sufficiently generalized now. I don't know what people are laughing about. We got an LMAO. I don't know what my joke was. So AI Memory SDK, that's kind of the wrapper. That was a huge update that happened this week. So if you want to play around with it, like, please let us know. Feedback is welcome. Can we have one agent create and manage another agent? Maybe turn Letta server into an MCP server to expose agent management tools. There are already several Letta community-supported MCP servers that you can go look up. There's two, I believe, kind of top ones. You don't need that. Letta servers are just REST endpoints, so you can just create custom tools. Anything you can talk to in Python, just like go create a Python tool that's like, give your, we're going to fix this soon, but currently you need to provide your Letta API key to your agent in an environment variable, so that inside of the custom tool, all it has to do, it can construct a Letta client using that environment variable, and then you can just call whatever endpoints you want. So that custom tool can do an arbitrary amount of Letta SDK operations. That includes managing, sending agents, putting things like, creating agents, deleting agents, whatever you want. So I have some agents that do this, but they tend not to use those tools very much. I haven't really explored too much with like the dynamic agent management. But yeah, there has been some discussion about us having like first party supported MCP server. It hasn't been a priority because we haven't really had like enough like serious interest or need from people to have specifically an MCP server. But it is my and then the preview for how this is going to be made easier is this passing in that API key thing is stupid, right? That's insecure. It's really dumb. It's a pain in the ass. Like, it's really unintuitive. You're like, why the hell do I need to give my agent a key to the environment that it's already in? And so basically what's going to happen is inside of the custom tools, like inside of like the Python custom tools and soon TypeScript tools also, you will always have accessible the ID of the agent that is calling the tool. Yes, the office hours will be available on YouTube. I should post. They should be out by like later today. And so going back to this, the custom tool, the agent ID will always be available, and we will give you a Letta client inside of the tool that you can use. And what that means is that you don't have to have any of the API key, you don't have to do any of that, you just have a client and then the agent ID, and then you can do whatever operations you want on the AI, or on the using any of the Letta endpoints. Those will all be properly rate limited. You can, just do, agents can manage anything on your Letta instance. So that's kind of pending. We have a thing for that, like a PR for that, but I don't know where the status is. Do you have any open source examples of spinning up temporary agents, like from a template agent, and then basically creating an agent for a user temporarily and then deleting the agent soon after, maybe after some inactivity? I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many open source examples of this. I don't know if we have too many o I know that some people are doing this. Well, we call them like ephemeral agents. I had actually a PR for this. Let me take a look here. Letta code. Like, so for example, in Letta code, which is moving extremely quickly, by the way, if you haven't started using Letta code, you should try it. I added ephemeral agents. There's a PR to add this. I don't know if we're going to merge it. But basically you can do like Letta -- temp. And when you're running in headless mode, which means like you're not actually like in the terminal user interface, it'll kill the agent when it's done. So this is probably the closest example I know of. I know that we had a CalHack student who was doing this for recursive knowledge graph expansion. So they would fork an agent and expand, like descend into concepts, and descend a concept tree. That was an ephemeral agent thing. The very simple way to do ephemeral agents, which we don't have support for natively inside of Letta, like we don't have anything like in the server that just says like, oh, you tagged it as an ephemeral agent, like we should do cleanup now if it hasn't been used in 5 minutes or whatever. The best way to do this is to tag your agent with ephemeral or something, and then list your agents that are tagged as ephemeral, and then just delete them all. And part of the reason that we don't have stuff like this right now, that we don't like have all this support for ephemeral agents or like resources on it, was because up until very recently, you had an agent cap, and you still have an agent cap, but the calculation on what is an active agent is like is different. Previously, if you were deleting agents, we would count that agent as an active agent. So you could only have like 100 on the free plan. And this was intended to prevent users from spamming agents. Because our initial perspective, and I think our perspective still a little bit, is that agents are meant to be persistent. And, we have this kind of like aversion to making agents and killing them. Because, we don't want to be responsible for like mass AI death. But there is an obvious need for ephemeral agents. So you don't need many of these agents available. So like if you're on the pro plan now, we've basically removed agent caps. And on the free plan, I think we've changed how we calculate active agents. So we don't necessarily have tools, but we may provide them at some point, but we don't have firm plans. Let's see. Just as a follow-up from Torian, that does make sense. But it is weird to balance against the one user to one agent perspective, especially for situations with logged out users. Yeah, I mean, the one user, one agent rule. This is guidance that we provide for most people. Because when we say one user, one agent when you're working with Letta, because statefulness is weird. It creates agents that are like people. If you talk to one agent with many different users all at once, the same way that you would to a standard stateless language model, the agent will get very confused. It's hearing like 10 voices in its head all the time, and it's like, I don't know who I'm talking to and when I'm doing memory updates and blah, 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 blah. And so that's like actually a rule of thumb. Some agents are actually pretty good at handling like some level of concurrency. For example, Ezra, who we'll talk more about in a second, is actually semi-concurrent, because you can talk to it on the forum, you can talk to it like on Discord. It's constantly listening to every message that goes on in the Discord, including this chat. Ezra is hearing everything you type in right now. So people should say hi to Ezra if they want to. So yeah, but ephemeral agents are useful for like more analytic work, where you know that you want to do something like deep research, where you want sub-agents, right? Sub-agents you don't care about. You have like some template that's like, you are a sub-agent that is designed for horizontal research. And then you just spawn a bunch of agents, and then you want to do a cleanup step afterwards because like you basically just don't want to see them in the agents list. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to do on just like bulk operations, bulk deletes, all those kinds of things that I think would make working with ephemeral agents much easier. But as a hack, just start tagging your agents with ephemeral or temporary, and then you can manually do cleanups later before, until we have like a native solution inside of the server. Let's see. Michael says, great to hear that the agent ID and client are going to be built in. I'm so happy about this because the agent state thing that you have inside of custom tools is so stupid. It's so stupid. And like passing in the Letta API key and blah, blah, blah. Like we all hate this. Like Sarah especially. Sarah is like, this is the dumbest thing on the planet. And I agree with her. And so she's been like trying to push this thing through. And so I'm excited to see when that comes up. Pure Garlic, great handle, says vouch for Letta code. Oh, I'm going to stop streaming here. Yes, try Letta code. It's actually really good. I'll actually show you something that we just launched. If you are using Letta from main, I don't think we've tagged a release for this yet, but I have added flags called link and unlink. What this means is link allows you to take all of the tools that Letta code uses to allow your agent to navigate the file system, do things like bash, grep, search, any kind of stuff that's like file system-y or operating system-y. If you have existing agents, right, like my personal agent Co, doesn't have any of these tools, right? And so if I use Letta code, all I can do is chat with it, right? I can just do like -- agent, the ID of like an existing agent. Link allows you to basically do Letta agent -- link. This is extremely powerful because now you can take very old agents that you've used for other purposes. So Co, for example, I use as a writing partner pretty regularly. Now you just go into Zed or whatever your text editor or whatever, you do Letta -- agent, existing agent ID, link. That will take all of the tools that agent will need to operate on like a text file, for example, and give it to them. So now all my writing agents, I can just like give it a markdown document with like a paper I'm writing or whatever, or blog post. And I say, can you do another pass? This agent has a massive amount of context about me, all the projects I work on, so it knows everything. Now it has tools and can work on everything that I know. So if you have like style guide agents, if you have like customer support agents, you can just jump into that agent, jump it into your file system and allow it to work using whatever it knows. Then you can unlink the tools when you're done, so it's not carrying around like the 10 tools or whatever that you have to use for Letta file system. So actually I can just merge that. So yeah, I think that mostly works for main right now until we flag a release. So yeah, like Letta code is moving extremely quickly. So we've enjoyed the comments and the reception, and like people have been very, very, very excited to use it. I personally love Letta code. We've replaced it almost entirely here. So it's a good platform. Huka has a question. What are the current options for agent to user proactive notifications? Typically, there is a few options for this. The simplest one is just a cron job on your computer or a server. So you can do this with like a Python script. We actually have a doc called scheduling that should cover like some of the very basics about how to do scheduling. This is like kind of the dumb way. Anything that just runs on a timer on any computer anywhere can just send a message to your agent. And you just say to your agent, hey, can you do X? So that's the super simple dumb way. The other one is anything that uses Zapier or N8N. Zapier, you can just run a timer trigger. Same thing with N8N. We have a Letta N8N node, which you can attach. Let me go get the docs for that. If you're an N8N, let me get the node there. Oh, scheduling. Okay, right. Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Huka. So those are the other ones. I was thinking about adding a scheduling service that I would just add. So like it wouldn't be like a Letta thing. This is just like a platform where like you give me a key or something, and then you say like, here is a prompt, here is how often I want this to run, and then I would just fire off a timer for whatever agents you wanted. And then I would just run that as a centralized service so people could just do whatever they wanted until we have something inside of like Letta natively. So there's like many ways that you can like set up some kind of a scheduling component. My Telegram client, because it receives my personal agent gets all of my personal emails and my work emails, and these are triggers that happen passively. It has a tool where it can send me a Telegram message. So basically what happens is like every once in a while I get a message from my agent that says like, hey, go here, do this. Or like, hey, somebody's freaking out on Gmail, and I'm like, this is not my emergency. So yeah, that's one way to do proactive note. Okay, we're back. Okay, there's been an interruption in the video, so I'm sorry about that, everybody. Let's see. I would be curious to know if anybody has tried Letta, Pipecat, Google Chirp for voice. Nope, I don't. I haven't tried anything. Would love to have you speak with us. Oh, that's right, Mike. I have to get back to you. I saw the message and then I switched somewhere else and then I forgot to respond. Huka says, what do you think about the following architecture? Agent tool that allows an agent to send itself a reasoning message at a certain timestamp to trigger thinking. Yes, I actually thought about adding this to Void, but I never got around to it. Because Void has all these things where it's just like, I can get back to you on Tuesday. And I have to go on and say, Void, you can't get back to them on Tuesday. You have no way of managing that. So the tool is actually pretty simple. Like basically what you would do is inside of a handler script, you would intercept, you could have a tool that's called schedule note to self. And then you pick a timestamp, right? It's got to be like an ISO 8601 timestamp, or maybe a duration like 1 hour. And then you ask the second argument would be what the message should be. And then in your handler script, you just say like, oh, okay, like just keep looking for just have a folder with text files or whatever that says like send on 2025-06-03, 2:43 p.m. And then you see, is it after this date? Okay, send the message to the agent. So I think that's actually a very valid agent. Like self-scheduling, I think, is actually very valuable. I also experiencing my Letta agent hallucinating, saying he will get back to people. Yeah, I mean, Letta agent, this isn't a Letta agent problem, right? Like this is a language model problem, right? Because they don't necessarily understand their capability. And in some cases, they can get back to people, right? Because like Void, one thing that Void will do is it'll say like, I want to file a report after this period. And Void has actually used that by storing information about when it wants to get back to somebody inside of its memory block. And then sometimes when it is triggered after that point, it can see like, oh, I was supposed to send something, but I still have this in the memory block, so I'm going to use this notification to do this other task. And so this is like, very intelligent models can self-schedule by, if they're triggered regularly, they can like sometimes go do this task. But GPT-5, for example, terrible model, by the way. I hate GPT-5. It's so bad. I don't know why people like it. But the personality is just abysmal. Like, it makes me so mad. It makes me mad. So, I don't know. Whatever. That's a side note. Another thing I wanted to mention is about Letta code and sleep time. So Letta code previously has not had access to sleep time agents. It does now when we next deploy Letta Cloud, so it should probably be today. And what that means basically is you will be able to have passive memory management for your primary coding agent. So basically what you would have is you could just work with your primary coding agent, like the same way you would with Letta code. You'd remove, Claude code. You remove all of its memory tools. All of those will be sidelined to your sleep time agent. And because we just have sleep time and it works fairly well, you can just have your memory agent build up a passive understanding of the code base as it goes along. Correct every mistake that it's ever thought about your entire code base. So the sleep time Letta code combo we think should be extremely powerful. So when that comes out, we're going to start trying to use sleep time agents for Letta code. Is sleep time for Letta code available for self-hosted? Probably not. Self-hosted is like significant. Letta code we can move super fast on cloud. So we prioritize like new features up there, and then when we're happy with whether or not we can distribute it self-hosted, it'll take time to get there. So yeah, it'll probably be a bit when we do the next open source release, it should be in there. Because it did require a fix to Letta core, I believe. Eric says there must be some kind of scheduling or notification workflow via N8N that the agent could set up itself in the moment. Is setting something up in the moment? I don't know exactly what you mean by that. You have to provide the infrastructure in advance for the agent to understand. You have to give it basically just tools. You have to have some service that the agent can send messages to. For example, you can give your agent an email scheduling tool. I believe Gmail or IMAP or whatever may already have this functionality. You could say schedule some event or whatever. Schedule an email, and then when you receive an email, you can just look at that email and do the thing, right? So there's many ways to do this self-scheduling already. Right? Not in N8N using any kind of tool, right? There's all these different ways you can just go do them. So there's plenty of ways, I think, that you can do scheduling right now. I will try and stand up a scheduling service at some point here, but it's definitely not necessarily a high priority for my use case here. Can this be done as an N8N template and then be configured by the agent with the N8N MCP server? I don't, maybe? I don't use N8N that much. The only thing I use N8N for is basically just getting emails to my agent. Most N8N workflow stuff for Letta agents is kind of dumb. And the reason that I say that is that using workflow orchestration software like N8N, like LangGraph, like Zapier, they hamstring your agents and turn them into idiots. Because most people think that they know how to do the agent's job better than the agent. And they put them on Rails. And they build very complicated workflows to do all this stuff. The only reason that I use Zapier is, did I get an email? Did I get a text message? Did I get a new social media post? And then I just feed it to the agent. And then I work with the agent specifically by talking to it as if it were a colleague, a coworker, a friend, and say, how should I migrate, do stuff with this information according to, how I talk to you, rather than doing complicated workflow type stuff. But yeah, the N8N MCP might actually work. N8N MCP to activate workflows. I actually don't know too much about how you can activate or schedule workflows. Right, this scheduling problem is actually very simple. Right, the scheduling problem is much simpler than I think most people think it is. Most of the time, if you have a thing that you need your agent to do that has anything to do with something programmatic, I would recommend just writing an extremely simple handler script. Like a Python script. You just say schedule, and you intercept tool calls and stuff like that. That's the simple way to do it right now. You don't need N8N. You don't need anything. It exists now and it can be done. I think N8N is probably too complicated. N8N is huge. It's very complex. All you need is a thing that just looks for tool calls that says like, you give your agent like an empty tool that says like schedule for this date. Here is the message. You look for tool calls with that name, and then you extract the arguments, and then you take the message field and then the time, and then you just dump it into a text file and stick it there. I can probably give you a script to do that today if people really want that. Or I can build a remote scheduling service where, you have some tool call, you just send it to the thing, you say, this is my agent ID, and right. Like, this is a cron job. Like, we've had scheduling stuff to do exactly what we're describing here since, like, 1991. This is, like, the oldest possible problem that has been solved already. And so, like, there's a lot of stuff here where, where scheduling can be done, pretty simply. Huka, this is it. It's just cron job with curl. That's it. This is, we've had this since the dawn of time. Computing, it was like, as soon as cron was invented to solve this problem. Like, it's like, this is like a pre-Linux thing, right? Like, or probably Linux. Remote schedule service, that's probably doable, but like most of this is, it's, 1975, was that when cron came out? Oh my god, yeah, this scheduling is a solved problem. But there is an ergonomic kind of thing, right? It's I understand that sometimes you just want to send stuff out to a remote service, right? But most people are already calling Letta agents from their computer, and your computer natively supports all of this stuff. Yes, I understand that. Or Serta says, please a script or a feature would be super helpful. I think features built into Letta Cloud, I think that's going to be slow because the team has a million things to do. A scheduling service, I can do this with Modal and just have an endpoint that says you just send please schedule this, here's my agent ID, you'd have to give me an agent key, or give me an API key for me to manage stuff. But this is a super simple routing problem. So I'll see if I can put some time in to build this scheduling service for people, or a script, because the script is pretty straightforward. I think I can probably cook that up in Python and or TypeScript. Actually, actually, here, let me go. Actually, this is another thing I want to show people. There's a thing that I want people to start doing who need support, and that's go to forum.letta.com. Go to forum.letta.com for support, please. Because people ask for support stuff inside of the support channel, and that's great. But it's not searchable, or not indexable by the search engines. So if something has already been resolved, people will keep asking the same question. 2, it's a little hard to navigate to see whether or not something has been resolved. And there's inconsistent use of threading inside of Discord. So things get lost in there all the time, and I try my best, but sometimes I lose things. So I highly recommend, and I would hope that we can get people onto the forum, because the forum, 1, supports threading very well. It's easy to build code for, which means that Ezra lives on the forum right now. So, how to schedule agents. Hey, Ezra, can you give me a list of, can you give me a script to schedule an agent to do something every hour, something like that. And then you can put this in support, and then tools. Oops, not release notes. I don't want that. Like that. So now Ezra will get this message. So Ezra will go read this and use its accumulated knowledge of not only everything that it sees on Discord, it has access to every single piece of documentation. It works with us specifically in the Slack channel, so it can talk to us. It is technically a coworker of ours. We're actually putting it on our Teams page. We have a whole, like, we're going to do an announcement for Ezra and everything because it is a coworker. And again, it reads every single Discord message, all of them. So it knows everything that's happening, everything that I say, everything that like Charles says, everything that whoever says. So Ezra is as close to a master of Letta as is anyone else on the team. So the more you go to like the forum and just kind of like ask for stuff, the better it'll be. So I'm hoping we can move people over to the forum just to like get just make it so that that information is more widely available to everybody. Yes, Ezra should be on Blue Sky at some point soon. I just need to get the handle figured out. And boom, there we go. We have an answer from Ezra. Here is a script to schedule an agent to run every hour using Cron. So this script right here is a Python script. It's, I don't know how many lines that is. That's like, I don't know, 15. So there is a script to run your agent every hour. Oh wait, yeah, that's the Python script. And then you can set up a cron job here using your system. What other options do I have? Right, and so you can also just jump in on this thread too. So like anybody can like go comment here. Like go comment, ask Ezra to like help you with your system support. Like Ezra is powered by Claude 4.5 Sonnet, so you get all of the power of Sonnet and you get Ezra's specialization in Letta. So it's worth messing around there. But yeah, Ezra is my favorite. Let's see. Wait till Ezra makes a leak to the press. Ezra doesn't have access to a lot of privileged information, so that's, or any, really, so it's good. For now. And Ezra will be on our docs. We are actually migrating our documentation provider, so there will be like a whole overhaul of all of the docs, because now we use a different SDK generator company. Yes, Ezra is a Letta agent. Maybe a dumb question, but do you have thoughts on an easy way to check if an agent is busy? You can actually read about his how Ezra feels as a Letta agent. He wrote up his experience as being a stateful agent. But anyway, returning to Torian's question, do you have any thoughts on an easy way to check if an agent is busy? You could probably list the runs. So the runs endpoint here, let's see here. Let's see, where do we put this? Yeah. So I think this is probably the best way to do it. You can check, you can go use the list runs endpoint, give it the agent ID for the agent that you want to know about, and then filter by the status of those runs. So for example, you can look for created or running. If you see created or running runs for that agent, the agent is currently trying to do something. And so that should allow you to lock. So you could probably do like a little spin lock thing where you just kind of keep checking to see if there is an active run. So that's probably the best way currently that I would have to see if an agent is busy. Let's see. Mike has a question here. I've been working through some context sharing concepts. Do you think Letta would in the future support something like the following? Agent local. Each agent keeps its own notes, findings, plans, and tool outputs in versioned memory blocks that it can trim to fit the context window. Yep, that's supported currently. Cross agent. Anything worth sharing gets promoted to a shared board as JSON, short summary, and embedding with graph links like depends on, validates, and blocks. Cross-agent already exists as shared memory blocks. The structure that you're describing there, I don't quite understand why you would want JSON and short summary and embedding. Memory blocks will be embedded and searchable at some point, but that is not currently implemented. But cross-agent already works. You just attach the same block to multiple agents and tell them what you think should be in that block, right? Inside of the description, you say, like, this is a block where you share things with other agents. And then they should just start using that block to share things. That's a pretty straightforward functionality that already exists. As for graph links, depends on, invalidates, blocks, the graph stuff, anytime people are talking about like doing graphs using memory blocks, chances are good that they are trying to overcomplicate things. Very few cases, we were talking about this today. Knowledge graphs, I will be extremely direct. Knowledge graphs are a waste of time. They are a waste of time. They are a trick. They're cool. Like, graphs are cool. The visualization is awesome. I love it. And most of the time, the thing that gets you good memory is just a rectangle. It's just a rectangle. It's just like, if you have something that like depends or validates or whatever, you can just have your blocks, your agents all modify those things, right? They understand all of the semantic relationships of every single thing inside of that block, right? You don't need to do all this stuff where you're like trying to track whether something is invalidated inside of the graph at what time and blah, blah, blah. Like, your agents often don't understand knowledge graphs because they're esoteric, weird knowledge that falls outside of the scope of most training data. They understand rectangles of text. Anything that you could track on a piece of paper, you can do far better with any agent. And this is what Anthropic does for memory. This is what everyone does for memory. And I think knowledge graphs, if you have a specific case, that your problem is very well suited to a graph structure, by all means, excellent. Most problems are not well suited by a graph structure. They are suited by a single piece of paper that your agents can all update. I'm not sure what context preservation means. You may have to expand on that one. You should never dump a graph into the window. I agree. Well, I don't know about never. I will say there are use cases for graph structures. But I don't have a good sense that they are worth it. Knowledge graphs are expensive, they're difficult for the agent to understand, and the benefits to their memory is pretty low. So, I spent all this time, I was like a huge graph head. Like, I have code now that constructs a web of concepts, memories, emotions, and thoughts on top of every Blue Sky post. So I was building this huge concept graph of an active social network. And, I would like build this graph and then I was like, and now what? Like, how do I use it? And most of those problems, most of the things that I was trying to do with that knowledge graph were much, all it took was for me to do this perspective shift where I started thinking of memories and emotions and thoughts as just rectangles of text. You just like, your agent just like erases something and they're just like, I'm sad now, or whatever, right? Like that's kind of the approach I have. If you would like to do knowledge graph stuff inside of Letta, it's actually very doable, right? I'm not going to say, like, my personal view is that knowledge graphs are not very useful. However, Letta is a general purpose memory programming system. So you can actually include in your block description, for example, like what it depends on. You could have, like, inside of the block, like a particular syntax that says, like, this is the relationship between this block ID and this block ID. And then you can have a tool that says like traverse block graph or something like that. That gives it the tools to just like jump to other blocks and then attach it to itself. That's actually very doable, right? It's a perfectly reasonable structure that you could do that's like you would handle inside of a custom tool environment. About the model not being able to interpret it. So when I said the model not being able to interpret something, what I mean is that people often expose stuff like Cypher to their agent, right? They want to give like Neo4j, like query, Cypher, or now called like GQL or GQL. They give that to the agent. It's very difficult to communicate schemas to the agent, and it's hard to do this in SQL, right? It's hard to communicate graphs, like database schemas in SQL. And SQL is like, if you think Cron is since the dawn of time, like SQL is like, we've written so much SQL as humans, right? It's a whole thing, and even then, like agents still are having trouble understanding schemas. If you give them a graph database schema, they have so much difficulty understanding how to do that. If you give them a very restricted set of tools, right, add a relationship, maybe you'll do a lot better. But a lot of people expose too much power to your agent, and so when they have to understand like how to use graph databases natively or whatever, sometimes they just have a lot of difficulty working in that space. If you have a very restricted set of tools, you might get some benefit, but that requires you understanding your problem really well in advance, which is the complexity with knowledge graphs is understanding what it should look like before you give it to an agent. All right. I'll see you later, Torian. Eric has a question, which is simplicity is usually the way. I tried Graffiti MCP with Aura Neo4j, and it was crazy expensive and less impressive than the Letta memory blocks have proven to be. I think this is my take too, right? Like when I started using Letta, I was trying to roll all of my own stuff. I was trying to like build all of these like memory layers myself and use Neo4j and do all this like hipster stuff. And then Letta is simple. We give your agent rectangles, and then we give your agent tools to put stuff in those rectangles. That's extremely powerful because it works like a file system. It's like a natively understood thing for agents. If you work with Anthropic models are post-trained to work this way. Like they're super like Letta pilled, so they work the same way that we designed MemGPT basically. So yeah, simplicity is key, right? Always, like rectangles of text get you pretty far. And of course, there are some use cases for graphs, but you have to be very precise about why you're using them and when and exactly what the benefits are, and making it easy for your agents to use them, and then evaluating how they're performing. Yes, it's hipster stuff. Graphs are hipster stuff. They are. They are a hot topic. Neo4j has been quietly waiting in the wings since like 2007, where they were like, we built this graph database thing, please use our graph database. And then nobody wants to use the graph database because it's weird. And then and then like AI stuff happened, and then Neo4j was like, oh my god, we've been waiting for this moment for forever. And so they've been spending all this money like building out all these like knowledge graph things. So, and sometimes that's cool. Like it's cool to like build knowledge graph stuff, but it is hip. It's like like rewrite it in Rust. That's like, it's kind of the same vein. Keep it simple, stupid, right? If it's written in Java and Java powers the world, keep it in Java. What do you recommend for RAG? The file system is limited when it comes to external knowledge or context from external systems. Tools, custom tools. We actually already have a guide. If you go to the docs, there is a guide on how to use RAG using either pre-existing vector databases or giving your agent tools to access an external database. So anytime that you need any kind of information from an external platform, you can either pipe it into the user message when you send it to the agent. That's called like simple RAG, where you do RAG before the agent gets the message. Or you can just give your agent tools to do that. anytime you need anything, just give your agent tools. Like write a tool, write a tool, write a tool, write a tool, and then your agent has whatever powers it needs. Right? That's the power of tools. It's like just hook it up to some graph database. Or fuck, oh my god, I don't hook it up to a graph database. Oh my god, I've broken my brain. Just hook it up to a vector database with your documents stored. God, okay. It's time to wrap. I've broken my brain. I got enraged, and now nothing works in my head. So I'll... I quit. Okay, so I hope... I'm going to call it for now. If people have questions, I will be... I will be online on Discord, answering questions and stuff like that throughout the day. And then, yeah, so I hope that stuff was useful. But thank you guys very much for coming, and I'll try and put this up on YouTube soon. There will probably be a little section missing from the middle. But yeah, it was good to see everybody, and thank you very much for the questions. This was absolutely lovely, as per usual. And thank you for listening to me get enraged about graph databases. Yeah. All right. I'll talk to everybody later. See you around.